family. My name is Olis, and I'm a grateful member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I want to begin by just again saying how grateful I am to be here and what an honor it is to be invited and then invited back, right? You get invited once, right? That's the fluke. You get invited back, that's on purpose. And I remember the first time that I was asked to speak at this meeting, man, I was a nervous wreck. The Q&A freaked me out. I was like, what if I don't have the answer? Teresa was like, tell them you don't know. And this time I feel different, right? Because in the pandemic, I've shifted and I've grown in a way that I think is much more rapid than I had been growing in the prior years, because I was just out in the world living. And now I have this profound internal life that through which I'm connected to many of you. And so I'm really, really excited about this talk tonight. And so let's get to it. I want to start by talking about how I understand the 11th step. And then I want to talk about how I got to my 11th step, my own personal journey. And then I want to talk about the reading that I selected. Constructive imagination, right? Nothing wrong with that. And it really in my life is the foundation of the things that are good in my life. And so I want to talk about that. So let's talk about my understanding of the 11th step, right? So when we're in, and we agnostics, it ends the chapter by talking about seeking. And then we get to the 11th step, and the steps are written based on the experience of the first 100. So they're in the past tense, and it says sought, right? And so I think sought is the action in this step, right? And then it gives us a vehicle through prayer and meditation. But prayer and meditation for me isn't the point, it's just the vehicle. And for me, the goal, the point of the thing is to have this conscious contact with the God that I understand, right? I've got unconscious contact with the God that I understand all the time, right? Like, I don't breathe on my own. God gives me breath. And I don't need to be conscious of that. It just happens. There are lots of things that just happen because there is a God. And when I talk about God, I tell people that I mean the God that this makes the sun rise and set and the tide come and go. Wow. Gravity just blows my mind. The book talks about electricity, but how are we on a rock spinning in outer space and we don't fall off? What? Yeah, the universe that God has created is extraordinary. And we take it for granted, right? We just are living our lives and we don't often stop to think about the incredible gift that life is. I'm retired now, and which I got here through constructive imagination. I'm gonna talk about that later. But I live in this large building, and it's kind of like a retirement community, but not on purpose. It's a really interesting kind of environment that I live in. I live in Fort Lee, New Jersey, where like 2% of the people are Black. It's the first time I've lived in an environment like this. And so I'm on the elevator all day with sort of older people that don't look like me. And they ask, how are you doing? And I always say the same thing. Every day above ground is a good day. And that's the truth, whether things swing my way or not. And I think and I'm not pretending when I say that, I mean that. And I think it's because of the way that I've come to my 11th step practice. So if the goal of the 11th step practice is this conscious contact with God, then it gives us a warning, right? And the warning is, don't pray for stuff for you. Don't pray for stuff for you. Don't pray for stuff for you. And I've come to believe it's because I don't even know what's good for me. If I'd gotten the things I wanted, man, my dog walked, I'd be dog walked. And so it reminds me to seek two things. right? Knowledge of God's will and the power to carry it out. For many years, I just prayed. I don't know why. I don't know why. I just prayed for the knowledge. And let me just warn you, if you pray for the knowledge, but you don't pray for the power, that might not end well for you. You need the power. You need the power. And so this experience, I didn't say it, but my sobriety date is May 21st, 1987. And for all the people that are new, that are trying to figure out like how to be an old timer, it's really simple. Don't drink and don't die. I mean, I feel like that's what I've done. Like I've just stayed on the path, trudging, and not always forward. I've been on the path and I've moved backwards on the path sometimes. Because as the three pertinent ideas tell us at the end of what we read in meetings and how it works, it's drunk or sober. The three pertinent ideas: A, I can't manage my own life, drunk or sober. B, probably no human power could, drunk or sober. And that God could and would, my favorite word in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, if sought. And I love that word, particularly in relationship to the 11th step, but you'll see it in the 9th step also. The 9th step, what we call the 9th step promises, begin with if and end with if. It's required that I do something. It's required that I participate. And the book tells me that over and over and over again, right? Faith without work, dead indeed. So I want to talk about like how I got to 11, because I think as I was thinking about being here with you this evening, I was reflecting a lot on what I was like when I got here, what I was like before I got here. Because until I tell you that, when I tell you where I am now, you can't see the change. It doesn't seem as startling, but it's startling to me when I look back on it, when I look back on how much I've changed. And so, the first thing that happened was I had to come to understand what my problem was and what the solution was, right? And I'm going to talk to new people. I'm sorry. I'm going to talk to new people. When I got here, I came because I wanted to stop drinking. And then it took me a couple years to figure out this is not a not drinking program. Alcoholics Anonymous is not a stop drinking program, right? It's a live right program. When I live right, I don't need to drink. But what it took me a while to figure out, because I really, really thought drinking was my problem, right? That was why I needed an SR22 to drive. That's why it took me 2 years to get a driver's license and car insurance and a registration at the same address, 2 years sober to just achieve that. I wanted to have a party. I mean, I really felt like I'd achieved something, right? Until I really came to really, my friend Ralph says, come all the way in and sit all the way down, right? And when I came all the way in and I sat all the way down, and I moved out of regular AA, right? AA, which is fellowship AA. I love fellowship AA. I love them. But it didn't help me understand that my real problem was my spiritual malady. Yeah, I drank and I got thirsty. That ain't normal. If we went out to a party and we got home and you still had drink tickets, I wanted to fight you. I was like, how could you possibly leave free liquor on? What? So I had a physical thing with alcohol that was different. And, I certainly have a voice in my head. She's not gone. She talks to me. It sounds like me, and she's a liar. And she says all kinds of things that are not true. The number one thing she says is not true is that it's going to be different this time. I could beat the game. She's a liar. But the true gift of Alcoholics Anonymous in my life is understanding my spiritual malady. I took my first drink at 4 years old, right? Um, at 8, I switched to scotch, and at 13, I was drinking, and I had a boyfriend that was 24. And 16 to 24 was full blown insanity. And the truth is that I was that way because I was seeking things outside of me to deal with my spiritual malady. I really, really thought that if I could get the right person to love me, or if I could get the right hairdo, or the right job, or the right outfit, like if I could do enough squats and get a big booty, right? Like if I could just change something outside, it would all be better. And the gift of Alcoholics Anonymous in my life, and for the new people, my problem is an internal spiritual malady that requires a spiritual solution. Nothing else, and I'm drunk and sober, have tried other things. Nothing else works. And when you move into the spiritual practice that the steps offer you, the design for living, you realize that drinking and buying stuff and sleeping with people and being cute at the party and all of that is a mere shadow of what you get from the spiritual practice. I was thinking about how my life today is this beautiful, beautiful, extraordinary, incredible life that has a lot of solitude. I live alone, and I don't play music, or I don't have TV on all the time. And I love music, and I love Netflix. I spend a lot of time in solitude. I choose solitude. I find peace in solitude. And that might be like, oh, good for you. But I remember when I got here, 87, 88, 89. I was still in a place where I was sober, but I was seeking things outside myself. And I had a well-established practice of doing that. When I was a teenager in 1975, we didn't have cell phones. And so I would get up and get dressed and go out into the world looking to be in the mix. I knew that there was something happening somewhere. I needed to just find it. I'd get up, like, get dressed, put an outfit on. I lived far from the subway. I would walk like in the middle of the night. Seeking something outside me. Where was the party? I remember being really young, and I had a set of girlfriends. We all lived in the same building. And I remember we'd get up on Saturday mornings, we'd do our chores really quick, and then we'd put on our best little outfits. I'm talking about like 11, 12, 13. And don't let us find out where cute boy lived. We literally would go to his house and knock on his door and then have the black mother answer the phone. What are you doing here? My son is doing chores. We'll wait. Like seeking things outside myself for validation, for meaning, for peace, for connection, for love. Let me save you some heartache and pain. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. The beauty of the journey that we're in now, that you're invited into, go ahead and surrender. Go ahead. I heard this woman in a meeting recently said Einstein could miss it, but Bozo never does. Don't be too smart for this. Just surrender. What I have now is this internal resource that meets my needs. There's some things outside me that I think I want, but they don't matter. I have this internal resource. Why? Because I saw it, and I used the vehicle, prayer and meditation. To do what? To develop conscious contact. You know, I think I said when I was here last time that my goal is ceaseless prayer, to just be in this nonstop dialogue with God in my head, sometimes out loud, right? But in my head. Something happens that it doesn't look the way that I thought that it was going to look. I don't even fight anymore. I'm like, okay, God, what we gonna do with that? Because I now trust that everything that happens is for my benefit. That is not how I got here. I got here with an outfit and a plan. Ooh, I was going to show you a matching purse and some shoes, some stilettos, and I was going to, right? The book calls it our little plans and designs, right? Our little schemes. I think they're big, but if I surrender to the process, God has something bigger for me. And the thing that kept me from doing it was the fear of turning my will and my life over to something that I didn't yet understand. But if I'm honest, and the book helps me get honest, I picked a reading out of the 12 and 12 because all of the readings that I liked in the big book people had done. So I went and found myself a reading. I was like, yes, I'll talk about this, because really constructive imagination has been extraordinary in my life. But I'm a big book girl. And it tells me over and over and over again, this is a design for living. So let me interpret that for the new people. Alcoholics Anonymous, in this journey that we're on, that's a spiritual journey, isn't something you do over there and then you come back to your life. That's not what this is. Not if you really want to be in the club inside the club. The club, that's what Marty C. out of Toronto calls it. The club inside the club. If you really want what the book offers, to be rocketed, to be happy, joyous, and free no matter what happens outside. Then Alcoholics Anonymous becomes the foundation upon which the rest of my life is built. When it was something I did out there, like I went to a meeting, I worked with a sponsor, I worked with a sponsee, I had a little service commitment, right? I did that for more than a decade. I got what I got. I got sobriety. I got what I got, right? But in going through it and truly, truly being on this path of seeking, using the tool, prayer and meditation, for what? Conscious contact, not for stuff. Not for stuff. I promise you, forget stuff. You're sitting here and you're like, but I want a white picket fence and forget that. Forget, if you just could put that aside and focus on developing this conscious. So, because I was invited to talk, I'm going to talk about my concept of God before I go to the constructive imagination. And this is not anybody else's concept of God. This is not in the book. This is my conception of God. First thing that I want to acknowledge is that the book offers me, this process offers me the opportunity to have a conception. When somebody says conception, I know you think of sperm and egg. I know you do, because that's how we talk about conception in this culture, right? And it's not dissimilar, right? I've got to have me, maybe I'm the egg and the sperm, the willingness to have this consciousness of a power greater than me enter me. Then just like the baby, it grows and it grows and it grows. The God that I had in 1987 is not the God that I have now. It's not. I've continued to seek and I've continued to have these experiences. You know, I think I've said this on record before. I was in a tough spot in fundraising for my job, and I hired a new guy and to do the finances, and he made a mistake, and it put me in a position where it looked like I wasn't doing my job. Whew, I was hot about that. And after the meeting, a board member came in and stood behind me to do Reiki, non-touch body work. And I had a vision. I'd never had a vision. People told me they had visions. I was like, woohoo, right? I didn't, what are you talking about? You saw something. And these three old Black women appeared in front of me. One of them was sitting on a stump. And they said, child, do you really think we would let something happen to you? And they laughed at me. And then they were gone. That was my conscious contact with God. Who knew that it included in a meaningful way my ancestors? And I'm sharing that not because I think somebody else should have that concept of God, but to say that we're invited to have a conception. Have whatever conception is right for you and let it grow into whatever it grows into. I am not the arbiter of my conception. I've let it in and it's growing into what it's going to be. Anybody here that's been pregnant? It's growing into what it's going to be. I'm simply the vessel. And that's a message for somebody. And then why can't I just go straight to 11? Like, why do I have to do all this other stuff? Why? I don't want to do all this other stuff. Well, I got to do 3 because the real thing that stands in the way of this relationship that I want is my own bondage to myself. I think I have the answers. I think I'm so smart. I think my plan, I think the what I want, how I want my life to be. That is absolutely positively in the way. My bondage of self, my commitment to seeing the world through my lens. What is self-centered? I stand in the middle and I look all around, but I'm always in the center. No, I don't go in the center all the time. Sometimes I'm standing shoulder to shoulder with you. Sometimes I'm not even in it at all. I've come outside of myself to see where I can be of service. And so I've got to do 3. I've got to surrender because I can't really build a relationship as long as all I'm doing is using the relationship to do what I want. Santa Claus God, Genie God. No, I'm never going to get what I want like that because what I want is happiness and joy and freedom, not stuff. We scare the newcomer about 4 and 5. Just forgive me for saying this. We do. And, and there's a solution. It says there's a solution. It takes us 7 pages to get there. There's a solution. And then it says almost nobody likes, right? The self-searching, the leveling of pride, the confession of short. That's the doorway to freedom. That's the doorway to the solution. And where do I find that? I find it at 4 and 5. I mean, it'll come back in 10, but it's this process of being willing to see the truth about myself. Because the truth about myself is that all of the pain and the anguish in my life that has endured is caused by me. The pain and the anguish in my life that is momentary. I got molested, ouch. But he gone. It's the carrying it with me. I create that suffering. All suffering that has endured in my life is a function of the pattern of pain that I create in my life. And as long as I'm doing that, I'm not available to the source. I can't even see that I'm burning my life to the ground, drunk or sober. Yes, I need to recognize that things are objectionable in 6, and I need to ask God to remove the things that stand in the way of my usefulness in 7. I need to, right? I need to recognize I got some things about me that's not cool. It's not cool. 34 and a half years in, not cool. And I need to go and say, hey, will you remove them? Not because I deserve to be without defects, because that's not ever going to be the truth, but because some of the defects get in the way of my helping you. And here's the thing that took me a long time to figure out, man. God doesn't need my permission to do anything. My surrender in 3 is a demonstration of my willingness to be a vessel for God. But God doesn't need my permission for anything. God is God. But it's this willingness to be a vessel. Because I think I got here to get sober to have a great life. But it turns out that I got here and I got all these blessings to help y'all. I absolutely don't want to do that. I absolutely don't want to do that. Absolutely not. But that's the path, because that's the thing that I can do to please God. It doesn't give me any more love from God. It doesn't give me any more grace from God. That I already got that. That's why I'm here. But it allows me to demonstrate my love and my gratitude, because love is a verb. Gratitude is a verb. It's an action. And I do that by loving you, by giving you unmerited favor, grace, when I don't want to. That's how I demonstrate my gratitude for what I've been given. I want to get to this idea that's in the 12 and 12 about constructive imagination. And so the 11-step prayer is in the 12 and 12. And in the section of the book that I pull a quote out of, we read the 11-step prayer. And then Bill talks about, like, imagine you're laying on the beach and you're looking at the horizon and you're looking at the sea and you're thinking about the mystery and the beauty of that. And then Bill says, and then some people are going to be like, that's corny. Yeah, that's what we say, right? And then he says, but is it really? Because we've been using imagination all along, drunk and sober. I imagine that the spot on my leg was cancer. And when I went to the doctor and they looked at it, they're going to remove my leg. Oh my God, I got there too late. The spot's too big. I'm dead. I mean, that's, yeah. Do you remember being drunk and having all these great ideas about how when you got up out the bed or off the floor in the bathroom, hugging the toilet bowl, that you were going to do something fabulous, great, right? That's why I love Bill's story, right? The captain of vast enterprises, applause and money, all of those things outside of us that don't matter. And that's what I use my imagination for. Something bad was going to happen. When I got here, and for a while after I was here, and I don't know if anybody remembers this, the new people know it. You wake up with that sense of impending doom. You just woke up. You haven't even gotten out of the bed, and you know the other shoe's about to drop. Oh my God, I'm afraid. I don't even know what I'm afraid of. That's what tells me that I'm not connected to the power. Because that's fear, and fear is a lie from the pit of hell. And the reason that I do this seeking over and over and over again, and I've learned over the years how to use constructive imagination, is because I've come to believe that all things come from my mind. All things come from my mind. My thoughts drive my actions drive my situation drives the condition of my life. And where does it start? In my mind. And so how do I use my imagination for the good? Well, I do that because I've made a commitment to continue to seek this power with prayer and meditation. And in meditation, right, this quiet sitting not yogi, floating, not that. I don't do that. That's not part of my practice. This quiet sitting that has many different faces for me. In the morning, okay, God, what are we going to do with this day? I love that. I love waking up and surrendering the day to God. What are we going to do with this day? But there's this other thing. When faced with a problem or a challenge, I use constructive imagination. So I want to look at the time. I want to talk about how I retired with constructive imagination. So I had this job, and it was a great job, and it was a great career, and I loved the job, and I loved the work that I did, and it was extraordinary. Doing the work that I was able to do was a gift from God. God called me to the work, and I did the work, and it was just really beautiful work, like community development work, youth leadership development work, working with young people in one of the toughest neighborhoods in the country. And I love that work. And, but when it was time to go, it was time to go. And you know when it's time to go. I mean, if you're not drunk at the party, you know when it's time to go, right? When you're drunk at the party, you don't know it's time to go. The DJ done packed up his stuff, you still there. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when you sober and you're recovered, you know when it's time to go. And I didn't save anything for the swim back on my job. I swam out hard strokes all the way. And when it was time to let go, I was like, I can't even imagine getting another job. And so the running joke with my friends was, what'd you do last night? And I'm like, I fondled my Excel spreadsheet. And what I did was I got an Excel spreadsheet and I put everything, all my assets and liabilities on it. I am not a finance person. And I just fondled it. I would go and spend time with it all the time and be in quiet meditation with God, like, what we gonna do, God? I'm doing what you asked me to do. What we gonna do, God? What could it look like? What could the next life look like? And I did it. It didn't come quick because constructive imagination, which happens for me in meditation, doesn't mean that I come out of the meditative state with an answer. Sometimes it is a long process of thinking and considering and asking and seeking and just over and over. I did it for a couple years, at least 2. And then one day, the same thing that I had been looking at for a couple years suddenly was different. I'm not kidding. Suddenly, the numbers that I'd been looking at for years, that suddenly was different. And I believe that in that meditation with God about what would life look like going forward, when it was time, God opened the door and showed me, shined a light for me. I was able to, it took me a year and a half, transition out of the job, get a place in New York, be here for my mother while she transitioned out of life. And in that transition, I understood that I didn't want to go back to the work or any work at the level that I had been doing it. I no longer wanted or had the desire, the fire that God had put in me to do 70 hours a week. It just was gone. I'd been relieved of it, right? It was gone. And the door had opened, the light had been shown. I could see the path forward. And at 57 years old, I moved all the way across country and I started all over again. It's hard to believe, but when I moved to New Jersey, I didn't know anybody, not one soul. I had cousins in Queens that I had just sort of connected to. I didn't know anybody. And today, my life is extraordinarily full. I have people that I love, that love me, that I trust, that trust me, that I can call, that I can count on. And what am I saying? I'm saying that because I did the work to the best of my ability, I'm continuing to do the work to get to a place where I could seek this through prayer and meditation, this relationship, not a self-serving relationship, but a relationship about God. How will you have me be? How will you use me? What is the path forward for me? I was able to do some things that I didn't think, absolutely, it wasn't on my list to move to New Jersey. Jersey was never, never, never on my list. Sorry, Jersey people, never on my list. But Lana's like, why? But it was the path. And what I've learned is that if I, in meditation, turn my positive, constructive attention to imagining the life that God would have me have, then the doors open, that God makes the things possible, because the things that are in my mind, if they're good things and they're right things, constructive things, and I focus on them, I manifest them in the physical world. I don't know if that sounds crazy to you guys. I can only tell you what my experience has been. I can only tell you what my experience has been. All things that are true in my life start in my mind, in my heart, in my soul. And when I am surrendered to accepting whatever God sends my way, beautiful, magical things have happened. So I am sure that I am out of time. It's really, really been an honor to be here again this evening.